Okay, so it is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. And I have to say, looking at the Business Wire this morning, the world just feels fundamentally different than it did, even 3 years ago?
It really does. It's palpable.
We've been tracking this trend for months. The rumors, these little headlines, all the VC chatter. But today, we are staring it right in the face.
Yeah.
We've officially reached what some are calling the singularity of the one-person unicorn.
It's the headline that I think everyone is scared to read but absolutely can't look away from. $1 billion valuation.
Right.
And one full-time employee.
It sounds impossible. My brain is still wired for the old physics of business.
Of course. The old model.
Yeah. You want to build a billion-dollar company. You need a campus. You need an HR department. You need layers of middle management just to decide what kind of snacks go in the break room. Mm-hmm. But the stack of research we're diving into today, and specifically this concept of the sovereign architect, it just flips that entire model on its head. It's like an inverted pyramid.
That inverted pyramid visual is probably the best way to ground this whole conversation, because in the old world, the base of the pyramid was human labor.
Thousands of people.
Thousands of people at the bottom, all supporting a few executives at the very top. The structure we're looking at today, it's a single human, one person, standing on top of a massive, completely invisible stack of automated systems.
And we should be really clear here. This isn't the Solo-Preneur from, say, 2015.
No, absolutely not. We need to be very precise. This isn't the gig economy freelancer who is hustling, trading hours for dollars, maybe juggling 3 clients to make rent.
Right, that was the whole hustle culture era.
Yeah.
This isn't about working harder.
It's not about working harder. It's about leverage, pure, almost infinite leverage. We've moved from an era of hiring talent to an era of orchestrating agents.
And that distinction is key. Worker versus agent.
It's everything. Because we aren't just talking about better software tools, like a better version of Excel or something. We are talking about, for all intents and purposes, synthetic employees.
That phrase, orchestrating agents, it just kept coming up again and again in the reading. It feels like the fundamental shift in the job description of a CEO. You aren't a manager anymore, you're a conductor.
Yeah.
But the orchestra is invisible, and it plays at the speed of light.
And it never sleeps. It never complains, and it scales infinitely on demand. But before we get too lost in the sci-fi gloss of it all, we have to look at the human cost.
Yeah.
Because the sources we have today, including that deep dive on the sovereign operator and the case studies on the agile agency, they paint a picture that is, it's equal parts exhilarating and frankly, terrifying.
So the mission today is to figure that out. How do we go from managing people to managing systems? And what happens to the human spirit when your only colleague is a recursive script?
A very big question.
Let's map the trajectory first, because we didn't just wake up today in 2026 with this capability out of nowhere. There's a historical arc here that the research outlines pretty clearly. It's this long battle between labor, capital, and leverage.
It's a battle over what actually constitutes wealth. If you go way back to the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution, wealth was purely a function of labor and physical capital.
Right. Brawn
and buildings. If you owned a textile mill and you wanted to double your output, you had no choice. You had to build a second building and hire another 500 bodies to work the machines. The leverage was totally linear.
Then the 20th century hits, and we enter what the research calls the managerial age. The era of the boss.
Yes, the boss identity. It became this dominant cultural force. Success wasn't about, making the widget yourself. Success was managing the humans who made the widget.
That's a huge shift in values.
It's massive, and there's this staggering stat in the background notes. By the 1950s, 60% of all white-collar work in the United States existed solely to coordinate other workers.
Just think about that efficiency loss for a second. 60% of the payroll was just people, organizing other people. It's the literal definition of bureaucracy.
It was a necessary bureaucracy, though. That's the thing to remember. Humans are messy communication nodes. You needed that layer. But the first real crack in that belief, the belief that big value requires a big headcount, that happened back in 2014.
The precursor event.
Exactly. Facebook buying WhatsApp.
For $19 billion.
$19 billion. And just for context, at that time, a giant, General Motors was worth maybe $50 billion. And they had over 200,000 employees.
And WhatsApp had, what was it?
55.
55 people. I remember the headline. People just couldn't compute it. How can 55 people create that much value? But even then, those 55 people were elite engineers. They were burning the midnight oil. It was high leverage, sure, but it was still human leverage.
Precisely. You still needed a team. You needed someone to handle the servers, someone to design the UI, someone to fix the bugs when they came up. The decoupling wasn't complete yet.
So that brings us to the AI timeline.
The real break. The moment the rope finally snapped. That was the period between 2023 and 2025.
Okay, so this is where the tech gets really specific. 2023 was the generative catalyst. That's GPT-4, the chatbots everyone started using.
Right, and suddenly AI wasn't just, retrieving information like a search engine. It was creating drafts. It was brainstorming. It was an assistant.
A very powerful assistant.
Very powerful. But, and this is the crucial distinction that you, the listener, really need to get. The AI of 2023 was a tool. You had to hold it, you had to prompt it, wait for the output, check the output, copy-paste the output somewhere else. It was a human-in-the-loop workflow.
So it made you faster, but it didn't replace you.
Exactly. It didn't replace the need for you to be there driving it every step of the way. Which brings us to the agentic breakthrough of 2025.
This is the big one.
This is the whole ballgame. This is the shift from AI writing things to AI executing things. In 2025, we saw the stabilization of what are called agentic frameworks.
So what does that mean in practice?
It means we're talking about AI instances that have permission to act, to browse the web on their own, to access APIs, to use software interfaces, and this is the most important part, to make decisions based on a goal you give them.
So you don't tell it, write an email.
No. You tell an agent, get me a refund for this canceled flight. And the agent goes to the airline's website, it finds the refund policy, it chats with their support bot, it fills out the form, and it executes the transaction, all without you.
And that right there is the foundation for the one-person unicorn. Something Sam Altman predicted years ago, but now it's actually here.
It's here, and it represents the final transition from a human-centered organization where, culture and morale matter, to a system-centered enterprise.
Where the only thing that matters is the fidelity of the workflow.
You got it. The factory of 2026 isn't a building, it's a logic flow. And the software architect isn't a leader in the old sense. They're an auditor.
Okay, I want to dig into the mechanics of this because I think it's easy to just wave our hands and say, oh, the AI does it. But the case studies in our stack today are incredibly specific about how these one-person empires actually function.
They are.
Let's start with Lena and the Agile Agents Agency.
Lena is the perfect example, I think, because she works in a classic service industry. She runs a global marketing agency based in Austin. She has 150 enterprise-level clients.
150. Okay, so in the old math, 150 clients means you need
What?
account executives, project managers, creative directors, copywriters. You're looking at a staff of 40, 50 people minimum.
Minimum. I'd say closer to 60 if you want to do it well.
And Lena's staff count?
Zero. Zero full-time employees. She creates $4.2 million in annual revenue, and her payroll is zero.
Okay, so walk me through the tech stack. She opens her laptop in the morning. What is she actually doing? She's not just sitting there chatting with ChatGPT all day.
No, absolutely not. If she's in a chat window, she's losing money. She is using what the paper calls a master orchestrator architecture.
A master orchestrator.
Think of it like a central nervous system for the business. When a client request comes in, say, we need a new ad campaign for Instagram for Q1, that request doesn't go to her inbox, it hits the master agent.
And the master agent doesn't actually do the work.
It doesn't do the work itself. It parses the request and it acts like a senior project manager. It immediately spins up a team of sub-agents.
So it delegates.
Yeah.
Just like a human manager would.
Exactly. It creates what's called a directed acyclic graph. It's basically just a workflow. It might spawn an SEO agent to go scrape the latest keyword trends for that client's industry. It spawns a creative agent to draft ad copy based on those trends. It spawns a media buying agent to price out the ad spend on Instagram.
And the key is that these agents talk to each other, right?
They share a memory state. So if SEO agent discovers that, say, sustainable packaging is suddenly a trending topic, the creative agent automatically adjusts the ad copy to highlight the client's eco-friendly options without any human intervention.
So where is Lena in all of this? Is she just sipping coffee while this all happens in the background?
She is the bottleneck, but it's an intentional bottleneck. She is the taste layer or the approval layer.
Or quality controls.
Exactly. Once the agents have compiled the full campaign strategy, it sits in a queue on her dashboard. Lena opens it up, she reviews the strategy, maybe she tweaks the tone of one ad because the AI sounded a little too corporate.
A human touch.
A critical human touch. And then she clicks approve. And that single click triggers the execution. The agents buy the ads, polish the posts, start the campaign, and even send the invoice to the client's accounting department.
So her cost of goods sold isn't salary. It's compute power.
Her entire overhead is roughly $8,000 a month in API costs. That's it.
Well, that and a retainer for a human attorney, which is an interesting detail we should come back to.
We will. But fundamentally, she's arbitraging the cost of intelligence. She's selling the service at a premium human agency price, but she's producing it at a commodity compute cost.
The margin is almost infinite.
The margin is, it's disgusting. It's incredible, obviously, but it's also terrifying for anyone trying to compete with her using a traditional model.
It is the ultimate form of leverage. But it's not just in services. It works in creative fields, too, which is where the Elena case study comes in.
Right. Elena runs narrative threads.
Yes. And she's pulling in $4.3 million in ARR, annual recurring revenue, with a subscription service. And get this, it's for AI-generated romance novel outlines.
Romance novel outlines. Talk about a niche.
It's a massive, massive market. And her setup is even more specialized than Lena's. She has 12,000 subscribers paying her every month. She's not using a generalist model like GPT-4 out of the box. She has fine-tuned her own agents. So, like a team of specialized writers.
A synthetic team. She has a research agent that has ingested thousands of historical documents. So if a subscriber wants a story set in Regency England, the agent ensures the clothing descriptions and social customs are accurate.
So no zippers in 1820.
Exactly. The AI automatically checks for anachronisms. Then she has a narrative agent that's been trained specifically on the beat sheets of thousands of best-selling romance novels. It knows exactly when the meet cute needs to happen, when the dark night of the soul moment should occur for maximum impact.
That's incredible. But the one that really stood out to me was the community agent.
Yeah, this one is a little bit scary. The community agent manages her subscriber Discord server.
It's moderating 12,000 people.
It is. It answers their questions, it settles disputes between members, and it flags high-priority support tickets for Elena to handle personally.
So Elena's job isn't writing. What is it?
Her job is curation. She's constantly curating the training data. She's feeding the system better and better examples of what good storytelling looks like. She's not the writer. She is the system architect for a story generation engine.
Okay. We have to be honest here. The sources call this total solopreneurship. But is it really? Are they truly 100% alone? Because I have a hard time believing one person handles everything.
That's a great point.
What happens when the server crashes? Or what about a complex lawsuit?
You've just hit on the shadow workforce. That's the term the research uses. The myth is that they are 100% solo. The reality, as the data shows, is that they rely very heavily on fractional experts.
The Uberification of C-suite expertise.
Correct. So Lena or Elena might pay a top-tier human specialist $1,000 an hour for a very specific task. Maybe they need a high-level creative director to come in for a few hours and refresh the brand identity, or a specialized lawyer to navigate a tricky copyright claim.
So they use humans, but they use them as like API calls.
As distinct transactional modules?
Yeah.
Yes. They never, ever hire them full-time.
But why not? Is it just the cost? Or is there something else?
It's not just the cost. It's about maintaining what they call system purity.
System purity.
The moment you hire a full-time human, you introduce non-technical friction into the machine. Humans have good days and bad days. Humans have office politics. Humans need motivation and pep talks.
Latency.
The sovereign architect views human employees as latency in the system. They want the business to run on pure code, not on messy social contracts.
That is a very cold way to look at business. Humans are latency. But it's the perfect bridge to the psychology of the person running all this. Because if you spend your entire day optimizing loops and removing human latency, that has to rewire your brain.
It's a complete identity shift. Think about it. For the last 100 years, if you were a CEO, your primary skill was emotional intelligence. Can you motivate the troops? Can you give a great speech? Can you lead?
Leadership.
Now, the primary skill is systemic mastery. You aren't a general leading an army anymore. You are a programmer of logic flows. Your locus of control is totally different.
And the sources talk a lot about executive solitude.
It's a really profound form of isolation. Think about the dopamine loop you're in. You have this godlike efficiency. You can have an idea at 9:00 a.m., you can code the agentic workflow for it by 10:00 a.m., and by noon, it's executing globally. There's zero friction.
But there's also zero pushback.
There is no one in the room to say, hey, that's a really stupid idea.
Yeah.
Exactly. You are in an echo chamber of your own design. The agents are built to follow your intent with perfect fidelity. They don't have independent agency to challenge your worldview or your biases.
So these founders can end up spiraling into really bad decisions.
They do, because they lack the social checks and balances you'd get from a co-founder or boardroom. And then there's the cognitive load.
The term strategic loneliness really jumped out at me.
It's perfect, isn't it? Because you might not be managing people, but you are carrying the entire mental model of a billion-dollar company in your own head. Every single part of it.
If a team member leaves in a traditional company, it's a pain, but the company survives.
Right. But if a critical workflow breaks in a one-person unicorn, the entire business just stops. The founder has to understand every single API connection, every data pipe. It creates this state of hypervigilance.
There's that great line in the source material. It's the paradox of 2026. You don't have to manage people, but you have to manage yourself perfectly.
And that's an impossible standard. It also leads to this phenomenon the research calls imposter syndrome 2.0.
Which is this idea that if the machine did 99% of the work, did I actually build this?
It's the hollow victory feeling. If you make $4 million in a year, but you didn't really sweat for it in the traditional sense, if you just set up the dominoes and then watch them fall, it can feel completely unearned. So we're seeing these founders struggling with a lack of purpose, ironically, right at the peak of their financial success.
Let's zoom out to the societal level, because this is where it gets really complicated.
Right.
If Lena is making $4.2 million and keeping almost all of it, and in the process she's effectively replaced, say, 40 marketing jobs, those 40 people are just gone from that specific economic equation.
This is the leverage gap, and it is probably the single biggest economic risk we're facing in the late 2020s. We are witnessing the formation of a digital gentry.
A digital gentry.
It's a tiny, tiny class of operators who understand how to weave these systems together, and they're capturing absolutely outsized returns. And on the other side, you have a hollowing out of the middle class.
Specifically, the middle manager.
The middle manager is functionally extinct in this model. If your job was primarily coordination, and AI can coordinate information and tasks better, faster, and cheaper than a human, your job is gone. Society is splitting into two groups, those who build the systems and those who are displaced by them.
And this isn't happening evenly across the globe. I was really surprised by how much geography still matters here. The global perspectives section of the research shows this real divergence between the US, Europe, and Asia.
It's fascinating, right? The US is doing what the US always does, radical individualism.
The cowboy mentality.
It's the cowboy mythos, supercharged by AI. The tech stack is perfectly aligned with American capitalism, move fast, break things, and the winner keeps all the profit. But Europe is really pumping the brakes.
Because of liability laws?
The EU's AI liability directive is a massive hurdle for the one-person unicorn model. In Europe, if your autonomous agent makes a serious mistake, let's say Lena's media buying agent accidentally bids on a keyword that violates a trademark, or her content agent writes something libelous.
You can't just say, whoops, the bot did it.
No. The human owner is held liable as if they were a corporation with a negligent employee. The legal shield is much weaker. And that risk, that forces European founders to keep humans in the loop for compliance checks. It slows down the leverage. They just can't run as lean or as fast as their American counterparts.
And then you have East Asia, Japan, and Korea, which is going in a totally different direction with this concept of digital personhood.
This is the most futuristic development, I think. In Japan, corporate registries are actually beginning to experiment with allowing AI agents to hold a form of legal entity status. So the agent itself can be listed as an employee or a contractor.
Wow. But culturally, there's a lot of friction, right?
Huge friction. Japan, for example, values WA, which is harmony, group cohesion. The whole idea of a solopreneur hoarding all the wealth and glory for themselves is seen as culturally distasteful. It goes against the grain.
So in Japan, they're using the same tech, but for a different purpose.
They're using it to reinforce small family businesses. So instead of one person trying to build a global empire, you see a family of 3 using an army of agents to compete with a huge conglomerate. It's a model of community plus AI, not individual plus AI.
I want to talk about the customer side of this for a minute, the whole transparency issue.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a subscriber to Narrative Threads and I email their support and get a thoughtful, empathetic response about my subscription, I'm going to assume I'm talking to a person named Sarah on the support team.
Of course you are. And that is the shadow company problem. These businesses are passing the Turing test in customer service every single day. They look like a firm of 50 people. They act like a firm of 50 people. But it's just Elena in her server rack.
Is that fraud? I mean, where's the line?
That is the big debate right now.
Right.
Is it fraud to let a customer believe they're being cared for by a human when they're not? There's a big push for bot disclosure laws, like a made by human label versus a managed by AI label on websites.
But does the consumer actually care as long as their problem gets solved?
That's the counter argument. But I think we start to care when we think about the fragility of it all. If I'm a business relying on Lena's marketing agency and I find out the entire thing relies on one person in Austin not getting sick or hit by a bus, that's a huge business risk for me.
The systemic fragility.
Yeah.
It's the Achilles heel of the one-person unicorn. The bus factor, as they call it, is one.
It is. If the founder burns out, gets sick, or even just loses their internet connection for a day, the brain of the company is gone. The agents can continue executing the current loops they've been given, but they can't adapt to a new threat or a new opportunity.
And there's the lack of diversity. We talked about the psychological echo chamber, but functionally, if you don't have a team, you don't have any common sense redundancy.
Correct. A diverse human team catches errors that an individual might miss. A marketing manager might say, hey, wait a minute, this ad copy could be interpreted as really offensive in this specific cultural context. An AI trained on broad data might not catch that nuance, and the solo founder might miss it because they're tired or they have a blind spot.
One bad logic loop could destroy the entire brand overnight. There's just no safety net.
None. And economically, that concentration of wealth is the macro danger that looms over all of this.
It just breaks the whole engine of capitalism in a way.
It really does. Traditionally, a successful company distributes wealth through salaries. So in the old model, Lena's agency makes $4.2 million, but she pays out, say, $2 million in salaries, which then supports 40 other families who go out and spend that money in the economy.
The velocity of money.
And now Lena keeps the $4 million. The velocity of money just stops with her. Our tax codes, our social safety nets, our labor laws, they are not built for a world where one person can generate the GDP of a small town without hiring a single soul.
So we're left with this huge kind of philosophical question. If the machine can do all the work, if the how is completely solved and automated, what is the job of the human? What are we actually for in 2026?
That is the question of the decade. And the sources, they all seem to converge on one single answer.
Which is?
Taste.
Taste.
Vision, accountability, and taste. Because here's the fundamental reality of this new world. AI can generate average work infinitely and for free. It can write 1 million mediocre emails. It can design 1 million standard, boring logos in a world that's drowning in infinite average content. Extreme human taste becomes the scarcest, most valuable resource.
So the human's role becomes that of the ultimate curator, the guardian of meaning.
Precisely. The AI provides the execution. The human must provide the intent. The human has to decide what is worth building in the first place and why it matters. The machine has no desires. It has no vision for a better future. It only has instructions.
It's a strange kind of comfort, isn't it? We aren't being replaced entirely. We're being promoted to a job that's actually much harder.
We have to supply the meaning.
And that's a heavy burden to carry. The sovereign architect, the solopreneur of 2026. They're the canary in the coal mine for all of us. They've achieved absolute freedom, but they've also taken on absolute responsibility. They are testing the very limits of what a single human will can impose on the world.
It's the ultimate form of leverage.
It is. And I think the thought I want to leave everyone mulling over is something you alluded to earlier. The future doesn't ask, how many employees do you have?
It asks, how well do your systems think?
And if intelligence is cheap, if you can just buy it from an API for pennies, then intelligence itself is no longer the competitive advantage.
No, agency is.
Yeah.
And meaning. Those are the things that become sacred. Those are the things we have to protect.
A fascinating and slightly terrifying look at the world we're now living in. Thanks for breaking all that down.
Always a pleasure to try and decode the signal from the noise.
That's it for this deep dive. Check your own workflows, and we'll see you next time.